Hi, I'm Tracy Craig. I'll be moderating the meeting tonight. This is the former Ford Aeronutronics meeting for the Newport North Apartment Homes. This is a water board sponsored meeting, and we're here tonight to discuss the feasibility study for this property. And Jessica will go into that more in a minute. I just want to call attention to a couple things. When you came in, I hope you signed in, got a packet of papers. It includes an agenda, the presentation, and quite a few handouts that we've been relying on to let people know what's going on here. Also, food over here to our right. Restrooms are out here down the hall to the left. And we have a presentation tonight. It's about 15 minutes, I think. You're welcome to stop us at any time for questions. And I'm going to have our panel introduce themselves, and then we'll go right into the presentation. Okay? Super.
Hi, so I'm Jessica Law. I'm the case manager with the Santa Ana Water Board.
I'm Daniela Hamanazaroff. I'm the project manager with Wood. We are the consultant to Ford, so representing them tonight.
Hi, my name is Maddie Allgaier. I also work at Wood Environmental.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, Wood Environmental is the consultant for Ford, and Jessica is with the Water Board, and the Water Board oversees Ford's work. I also wanted to say that we are filming this tonight, and we'll have this live streamed on YouTube if somebody is here. If somebody is not here and wants to watch it later, that link will go out, and it will be on Ford's website, and we have that information in here. We'll also flash it up on the screen. Jessica.
All right. So tonight's presentation is, to really talk about the draft feasibility study. We have kicked off the public comment period. So tonight we're just going to go over a real quick recap, then go over the remediation process, talk about the remedial action objectives, then we'll go over the feasibility study and discuss the remedial alternatives, followed by giving more details on the public comment period, what the next steps are, and then go into our Q&A session. So to recap, the vapor intrusion assessment activities that have been conducted over the last couple of years is it's collected a lot of data, and so now we have a sufficient data set that was used in that human health risk assessment that was conducted for the southern portion of the Newport North apartment community. Conclusions identified that vapor intrusion may be occurring at a few properties, and there's the potential for future risk. The Santa Ana Water Board requested 2 reports. First was the feasibility study, and the other one was a longer-term indoor air monitoring plan. And then Wood submitted that draft feasibility study on February 4th of this year, and we provided our comments on June 20th. So the remediation process, I just want to go over this briefly. I've talked about it at past meetings, but it's just kind of important to note the process that it takes to get a site into remediation. So first we have site investigation, and that is just so we can understand and characterize the extent of contamination. That includes all those field investigations, the indoor air sampling, and then that data that's collected goes into that risk evaluation. Next is the feasibility study, and that develop and evaluates cleanup alternatives, and it recommends a remedial alternative to be implemented. And then where we're at now is that public comment period, and that's where we are announcing the proposed remedy and providing just an opportunity for public input. And then we go into remedial design as appropriate, and this more goes in alignment with sites where there is going to be active remediation. So that's where you would design the remedy and have any community protection measures, as well as securing any of the necessary permits from the city, county, and other oversight agencies. And then finally, it goes into the remedy implementation portion, and that includes the safe implementation of the remedy, as well as maintaining and monitoring the remedial measures that are in place. So the draft feasibility study, We refer to this often as the FS. It covers several items. And I'm going to go into more detail in the coming slides, but just to kind of give a broad overview. It proposes specific remedial action objectives, that's the cleanup goals. It conducted a feasibility study to evaluate the remedial technologies, identified and evaluated remedial alternatives based on the feasibility study. Then it proposes a remedial alternative for the Santa Ana Water Board approval and for public review and comment, which is where we're at now. And then this does, again, pertain to that southern portion. A separate cleanup plan will be developed for the northern portion, if necessary, at a later date. So I just wanted to show this map to show what area of the Newport North apartment community is covered by this feasibility study. So the remedial action objectives. Again, this is our RAOs, and included on this is what our comments were. So these are the cleanup goals, and it's intended to address each impacted media. Now, Newport North is far away from the original source area, being the former Ford facility. And you'll notice there's soil remedial action objectives. We do not anticipate any impacted soil because we are far away from the source area, but we still want them included. Those were the ESLs and or the environmental screening levels, and we concurred with that. For groundwater, it's full delineation and having decreasing concentrations. It's knowing that the contaminated groundwater will reach drinking water standards in a reasonable time frame, and that RAO we concurred with. With soil gas, it was proposed to use site-specific screening levels and to have stable or decreasing concentrations. And we generally concur with this. We had just one comment, and that was noted that increasing trend scenario was not addressed in the RAOs, and that we would like that covered in the final FS. And then for indoor air, they proposed using the environmental screening levels, and we also concurred with that one. So then the feasibility study, that just evaluates the remedial technologies based on the following criteria. It's the ability to implement, the effectiveness, and cost. In the feasibility study, it evaluated approximately 20 remedial technologies for cleaning up soil, soil gas, groundwater, and indoor air. And of those approximately 20, 8 were retained that were determined to be feasible for implementation. So the remedial alternatives that were considered, and a remedial alternative is just one or more remedial technologies that are proposed to meet those cleanup goals. So the remedial alternatives that were proposed, we first have no action, and just want to let you know that most or pretty much all feasibility studies have a remedial alternative of no action, and that is for comparative purposes. The next one is alternative 2. That included groundwater extraction, soil vapor extraction, and indoor air monitoring. And then finally, alternative 3 included monitored natural attenuation for groundwater and soil vapor, subslab depressurization as necessary, and then indoor air monitoring.
Jessica, I just need you to explain what monitored attenuation means.
I will in a couple slides.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I do go into that a little more. So these 3 remedial alternatives are compared to the National Contingency's 9 evaluation criteria. And this is categorized into 3 groups. So we have the threshold criteria, the primary balancing criteria, and the modifying criteria. So for the threshold criteria, all of these must be satisfied. So they have to be protective of human health and the environment, and they must comply with state and federal regulations. And as a result, this is typically where alternative one of no action goes away. Next is the primary balancing criteria. And so these 5 criteria, that long-term effectiveness and permanence, reduction of toxicity, mobility, and volume through treatment, short-term effectiveness, implementability, and cost are all weighed, and those major, they're evaluated to help determine which alternative to utilize. And then finally is the modifying criteria, and that addresses regulatory and community acceptance. And it is incredibly important and valuable to the Water Board that the community input and acceptance. And it's also mentioned in our regulatory statutes. So we want public input. So based on the evaluation criteria, alternative 3 was recommended in that draft feasibility study for our approval and to be presented as part of this public comment period. And so the proposed remedy would be one that monitored natural attenuation, and that just allows the natural ongoing processes to decrease groundwater and soil concentrations. It's not active remediation, but monitoring does occur to ensure that there are those decreasing trends. And this would include the installation of a few extra monitoring wells to make sure that is occurring. Next would be indoor air monitoring. It would be based on future risk criteria that was developed in the human health risk assessments. And then finally, subslab depressurization that was recommended would be vapor intrusion dependent. And so subslab depressurization just creates that negative pressure beneath the foundation, and it redirects vapors through piping to above the roof line to address vapor intrusion. And a couple of comments that we had on this alternative was that we thought it would be practical to include a few deeper soil gas probes to monitor that deeper soil gas. We have plenty in the shallow top, the 15 feet from the surface down to 15 feet below ground, but wanting to look a little deeper to get a better understanding there to help support the monitored natural attenuation. And then we had also commented about including considerations for addressing increasing soil gas concentration trends in the draft feasibility study as well. So this slide just shows where there are the 3 proposed monitoring wells. We've got, oh, it doesn't, sorry, the pointer doesn't show on here. I highlighted them with the blue circles on this figure, but they are strategically placed based on existing monitoring wells, the soil gas plume, and groundwater grab samples, and historical monitoring data. So then that brings us to the public comment period. And this just allows, again, for public input into the proposed remedy prior to Wood finalizing it. And the feasibility study, the final feasibility study, will be due to the Water Board 45 days following the end of the public comment period, and I'll talk on that time frame afterwards. And for any comments that are received, we will be preparing a responsiveness summary that will get sent out to anyone who submits comments, and it'll be included in the final feasibility study as well. And so the public comment period began on August 15th. It runs through September 14th. Comments will be taken tonight. In the last portion, actually, anytime we have a small enough group, so any comments pertaining to the FS, we will take them. And you can also submit comments in writing. You can email them to me, or you can mail them. My email address is jessica.law@waterboards.ca.gov, or you can mail it at the address here. It's 3737 Main Street, Suite 500 in Riverside, 92501. So then the next steps would be to finalize that feasibility study following the end of the public comment period and preparing that responsiveness summary, getting final water board approval of the FS. Then it would be preparing a remedial action plan, which would include any kind of work plans or designs, submitting that for water board approval, conducting any of the necessary permitting, if necessary, conducting a subslab depressurization pilot test, and then conducting that long-term monitoring from indoor air monitoring, groundwater, and soil gas. And so for additional information, we can always go to GeoTracker, which is the State Water Board's database, where for this site, all of the reports, analytical data, figures, bore logs, and stuff is uploaded there. You can do Liris List, which is the state's email subscription notification. So for this site, that we typically send emails out to let people know when the next public event is. The Water Board also has a web page for this site, and typically we put up primarily the public outreach material. And then Ford also has a site-specific website, and there they've got all of the reports and documents pertaining to the vapor intrusion investigation. They have some other information up there as well, and they have their 800 number for contacting and any questions you may have. And then there's also the local information repository at the library down by the Civic Center. So we can do any questions or comments.
Okay, the one thing I do want to say is that the public comment period was announced via fact sheet that the Water Board sent out to all apartment homes within Newport North. Looks like this. It has all of the information for Jessica on there, the public comment period dates, Ford's website, and Ford's 800 number. And with that, we would love to get questions from the audience if you have any.
And I'll say that the fact sheet's also up on GeoTracker as well as the Ford's website.
It is,
so
and I'm
those are also
assuming you
places.
also, Danielle, have copies as well if people want them. Yeah. So the property manager has copies as well. Okay, questions? We don't have a big audience tonight, so I'm thinking not. Okay, well, I'd like to thank our audience for coming, and we know you could have been elsewhere, and we appreciate your time and interest. And we look forward to getting any public comments that we receive. Thank you.
Thank you.